Good evening, Who Dat Nation, and happy Wednesday to our Bayou Blitz family. I hope everybody is doing very well out there. We're sitting here at the end of May. I'd like to be the first-ish, or maybe just one of the first, to wish everybody out there a happy early Memorial Day weekend. Make sure you're safe. Make sure you're happy. And a special happy holidays to those of you who have served, are serving, or have had family members that serve. Especially to those who have had family members who have given their lives, for this country. A special blessings to you. Anyway, I hope you're all doing happy, being happy out there. Football is back in the air, and you all know I love this time of year. It's track championships, football is in the air, and we have our first glimpse of summer weather. So this is about as happy as I can get. And on that note, I'd like to wish a special happy Wednesday to my partner in crime and your co-host of your Bayou Blitz podcast, Brendan Boylan. Good evening to you, Brendan.
Yeah, you as well. I echo the same sentiments towards this weekend and the holiday. Most importantly, you guys stay safe. I know that this is a holiday where a lot of people go out and they grill out, they drink a little bit, they're hanging out with their family, hanging out with their friends. Like Bob said, obviously there's a reason it's a holiday, and I hope you guys take some time to observe that, whether it be with your friends that have served, your family, what have you. But definitely stay safe. And to maybe like the one person other than me that's in this right now, that's in like the Carolinas or the Charlotte area, stay especially safe because it's also the Coca-Cola 600 this weekend. And so traffic by my house is going to be nightmarish.
Mm-hmm.
It's the 6th consecutive year that they've sold out. And I also got some word that Secret Service is supposed to be in town because the 45th president is supposed to be attending the race. So, yeah, you Charlotte, I don't even know what we call ourselves, Charlotteans, whatever. Like, you guys stay safe. I don't know.
Charlatans. I'm going to call you off charlatans from now on.
Charlatans. Us charlatans. You guys stay safe this weekend, race weekend for sure. But no, it's a good time. Like you said, Bob, the weather's starting to turn. It was in the 90s here today. So nice and warm in the Carolinas. Football's in the air for you baseball fans. Baseball's hitting a good stride. So it's Bob's like, whatever, I don't care. Yeah, there you go. Well, listen, one of the
IDGAF.
Okay. Well, I mean, thank you for abbreviating it, not saying it. But anyway, hello to everybody in the chat. Hope everybody's well. Bob, let's just jump right into it. OTAs open up. Obviously, we had some mini camp. For people like Bob and I that like sports cards, Panini had their rookie premiere photo shoots. So the first official photos that will be used on these guys' rookie cards have been taken. And as much as we don't like to talk about that team in Atlanta around here, they actually had a pretty cool one-on-one with Michael Penix Jr. Taking a photo, having the card printed and delivered to Penix within like a minute's time.
Nice.
Penix was like, "Well, this is my first rookie card, but you guys literally just took that photo. Like, that's crazy." So that was a pretty cool moment. I always think it's cool to have glimpses into these guys being like kids again and going, "Oh man, like I used to collect football cards. Like this is my football card. That's pretty cool." But Spencer Rattler was a part of that for the New Orleans Saints. Unfortunately, as much as it pains me to say this, like offensive linemen typically aren't invited to those type of events.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of people that are like, yeah, offensive lineman rookie card, let's go. But I digress. Bob,
yeah, it cracks me up because a 5th-round pick like Spencer Rattler's got his rookie card out there, and I guarantee you a 1st-round pick like Talise Fuaga, you're going to have a hell of a time finding his rookie card out there, for quite some time.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit. It's going to be probably when the lower end series stuff starts coming out. The the Don Russes of the world, that type of stuff. When that
Yeah.
stuff starts coming out, you're going to find some of your offensive linemen in those. John Butler said Rangers, Panthers game 1 as you speak. Yeah, I was going to say too. I mean, if you're a hockey fan, you got Stanley Cup playoffs. If you're an NBA fan like myself, you got the East and Western Conference Finals are now underway. So it's a good time for sports. And you guys are putting all that on the back burner to listen to Bob and I talk for an hour. So thank you guys.
Yeah.
That speaks volumes to Bob and I. But Bob, OTA is underway. There's a lot that people could take away. There's a lot of what did we call this? We had a term for this last year, but it was it's going to take me a little bit. Maybe I remember, maybe I don't. But it's essentially preseason hype or pre-training camp hype. Like, you have these ridiculous storylines that come out after like 1 or 2 days of OTAs, and you go, ugh, and it makes you cringe a little bit. It's kind of like flipping back through Facebook memories, you know, for people that are like my age, and you're like, oh man, that's cringy. That was 10 years ago. So that's kind of where we're at. But Bob, I want to open the floor to you. Some of your bigger takeaways of OTAs to this point.
Well, first of all, let me open as only I can with a sarcastic takeaway. Unfortunately, Spencer Rattler looks like he has some work to do to put himself back into Hall of Fame consideration for some of you fans. Man. After going, after only going 4 for 8 yesterday and throwing an interception in 7-on-7s, Rattler might not be the slam dunk Hall of Famer that some of y'all told us he was going to be. Maybe, just maybe, Derek Carr is going to be safe for 2024. I say with a very sarcastic roll of the eyes. Moving right along. I mean, some of the biggest news. Trevor Penning was getting a lot of snaps at right tackle, while Talise Fuaga was getting snaps at left tackle. This is the time to do this, folks. To see, Fuaga is can play right tackle. That's why they drafted him in the first round. That's where he played at Oregon State. Penning, he doesn't have the feet for left tackle. I think we can all agree, at least so far from what we've seen. But you can get away with a little bit heavier feet at right tackle. But it's a spot he's never played. So OTAs is the exact time to try this out, to see if you have something there. Because you're not going to give up. The Saints aren't going to give up on a first-round pick after just 2 years and 7 career starts. So you want to see if if he could potentially be a right tackle. You want to see if Fuaga could be a left tackle. You want to see what kind of options you have for an offensive line in desperate need of options up front. And with that, moving right along. As Brendan and I have predicted pretty much since the draft or shortly thereafter, left guard is going to be a position. The battle for the left guard spot is going to be a position to watch throughout the summer. Shane Lemieux and Nick Saldiveri were getting a lot of the action there, but I expect Lucas Patrick, who's getting some reps at center, but I expect Lucas Patrick to be in that mix as well, and perhaps even Oli Udoh, who's been a tackle throughout most of his career, but he's gotten some work inside at guard as well. So that left guard spot is going to be wide open. Speaking of OTA and pre-training camp hype. For those people that are talking up Spencer Rattler, many of the same people are talking up undrafted tight end Dallin Holker, talking about these two like they're going to be the next Breeze Graham connection. Again, cool your jets just a tiny bit. Wait at least until 11-on-11 drills. But Holker did showcase some nice athleticism, made some nice catches. Again, everything that I knew he was coming into the draft, he showed. What he hasn't had the opportunity to show that none of these guys have, and that's why you need to cool your jets on the offensive line too. Really no contact. So, the biggest knock on Dallin Holker was, that he really wasn't a very good blocker. Well, you're not going to find out if he is until those scrimmages against the 49ers and those preseason practices. But Again, he did showcase some nice receiving skills. Exactly why the Saints, pounced on him as soon as that draft ended. And another guy, guy that puts a smile on a lot of Saints fans' faces. Taysom Hill was getting some looks at fullback. Now there are some people that want to compare him to Kyle Juswick, the 49ers all-pro fullback, mainly because of the way Juswick was used by Clint Kubiak last year in San Francisco and really throughout his career. I like the fact that they're using Taysom this way. Again, if you can find something to expand what Taysom Hill can do for your offense, then by all means you try it out. But don't look for Taysom to play the role of a traditional lead blocking fullback. This is going to be a guy who's going to be a lead blocker on when lining up at this position, going to be a lead blocker on occasion, going to motion out of the backfield on other occasions into the slot or as an H-back, and at other times just take either a direct snap out of the backfield or flare out of the backfield for a check down or a screen pass. Again, if you find something, Clint Kubiak, Rick Dennison, if you find something that Taysom Hill has not yet done for the Saints offense, hell, see if he could do it. I'm all for that. Again, OTAs is when you try this new stuff out. Throw it at the wall, see what sticks, see what you got, not only out of your rookies, but out of your returning veterans. See if you can expand on some of that versatility.
I want to go back to what you were saying with the left guard position. Hey, Anna, thanks for joining us this evening, per usual. A familiar face. But I think one thing that was intriguing to me, and not so much OTA news, but just news around the time, was the news that broke that the Saints did make an effort to bring back Andrus Peat. However, Pete decided he wanted a change in his career. There are also some reports that he did have it on kind of his bucket list, if you will, to go play for the Raiders before the end of his career. And I guess for him,
why the hell would anyone have that on their bucket list?
I believe it was one of his relatives also played for the Raiders.
Okay.
So it was wanting to carry on the family tradition.
Fair.
So opportunity opened up for him. He took it, but I did think it was interesting that officially came out, because that was one thing you and I talked a lot about was, are the Saints going to make an effort? Or I guess at this point, were the Saints going to make an effort to go get Andrus Peat back, especially with all the dead money that they'd have to eat regardless, right? They're eating it whether he's on the roster or not.
Mm-hmm.
I do like the fact that they made the effort, but that also seems very desperate. And it's like going back to the X, It's like, to me, it was one of those, you break up before the prom and you're scrambling and realize you don't have a date to the prom. So you ask your ex-girlfriend, hey, do you want to go to prom? That's kind of what it felt like. And I do think it's concerning that this team does have those type of issues. And it's not just an issue that we're talking about or the national media or any other Saints members of the Saints media are talking about. The Saints themselves recognize, oh crap, we have a real issue here at offensive line. And I think that report kind of solidified that.
And I don't think there's any doubting that they continue to have issues along the offense. Frankly, they're going to have issues along the offensive line until they don't. Even now you look, can Fuaga play? We think he can, but you have to earn that first round billing. Can Penning develop? Can Saldiveri develop? Can Shane Lemieux stay healthy? Still some big question marks. And as far as the quote unquote effort to re-sign Andrus Peat, I'm sure they made some phone calls. Alan Ulrich and I talked about that last night on Under the Dome, and I compared it to Andrus Peat being the drunken hookup phone call for the Saints. First of all, New Orleans has never been the type of organization, after a player leaves, in a situation like this to say, oh yeah, we didn't want him. Good riddance. Good luck, but good riddance. they're always the kind, we were open to bringing him back. He just chose to go somewhere else. So, because I look at it this way, if they really, really wanted Andrus Peat, they had their opportunities to sign him before the draft. Even if you waited until after the draft to see if you got a guard that you liked in the first few rounds, and if you didn't, you still had 72. I think, Andrus didn't sign until 3 or 4 days after the draft. And the Saints had already signed Shane Lemieux and Justin Herron, while Andrus Peat was still out there too. So yeah, I think Andrus Peat was a drunken hookup phone call for the Saints. The type of person. I said female last night on Under the Dome, but this works both ways. The type of person, that you go out to the bar, you're hoping to find somebody, to take home. This is Crass Bob now talking. One of my past lives. You hope to find somebody that you're gonna take home or have a little bit of fun with. You don't, but you always have that phone call, to an Andrus Peat. Who's probably going to be sitting at home. Well, even the drunken hookups eventually move on with their lives, and I think that's what happened with Andrus Peat. That's the correlation I'm going to make.
Didn't see that one coming at all, but okay. Let's see. John Butler asks, am I near Wilmington? I'm not near Wilmington. I am quite a ways away from the beach. I'd like
about 4 hours, right?
I was going to say probably 4. It gets 3.5 to Myrtle Beach. So Wilmington, probably 4, depending on traffic, maybe 5.
That's not bad.
Glad to see that you two know how to pronounce Andrus. Oh, okay. Because the guy who commenting your name is Andrus. Okay.
Okay. I'm pretty sure we've always said it right. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say it wrong.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think I've ever heard someone mispronounce. But at the same time, first round pick. He's been around for a while. Like, that's also not a name that I feel like as soon as he got drafted, I'm like, man, I really got to look up the pronunciation of this. Fuaga, a little bit different, right? Like that's one that you're like, we're gonna have to figure this one out. Let's see, Andrus, as many do, they pronounce it like Andre. So
yeah, I could see that. Andre, even Andreas. Yeah, I could see that. I can't say that I've ever heard it, but I'm sure it's probably happened.
I'm sure. So that was my biggest takeaway. I think the other takeaway for me with OTAs getting away from the Andrus Peat conversation, I think what you said with the Taysom Hill thing, like, yeah, it's like the flashy splash right up to make right now, right? But anyone who follows this team closely that can't say, you know what, I saw that one coming, is lying to you because, this, and it's been weird over the years, right? Because Sean Payton had a very specific role that he wanted Taysom Hill to play, right? And we saw that. Like, we saw that from 17 to 21, that this is what Sean wants to do with his prized possession in life, Taysom Hill, right? And then after Sean left, it was kind of up to Pete Carmichael, and there were complaints from both Bob and I. And was it the 22 season? I think it was the 22 season. And I threw that stat out like all year long that like the Saints were undefeated in 22 when Taysom Hill had at least, I think it was 9 total touches between like receptions and rushing attempts. And I was like, we're underutilizing this guy, because when they do utilize this guy, like, they win football games.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody, I don't even remember who it was, but there was another Saints writer that expanded on that and said the Saints were like 14-1 over the last 15. And I was like, that was my stat. You stole it.
Mm-hmm.
I was very proud of that one. But yeah, I mean, so that was weird because it was like, so we went from going, what is Taysom Hill? Like, you guys got to pay attention of inflection on this one, okay? So I'm sorry to do this to you guys this late at night, but it was, what is Taysom Hill? Inflection's up here. It's intriguing what is Taysom Hill? That's kind of where we went over the course of like one season, because we're like, what is he to this team? What is he to non-Sean Payton? So you knew with the change at offensive coordinator to Clint Kubiak that you were going to, I don't want to say you want to get back up to what is Taysom Hill, but you do want to toy and experiment because you clearly saw what is Taysom Hill. We saw that not work, right? Yeah. So they want to toy, they want to experiment. Obviously, as soon as Kubiak was officially brought in, we saw a lot of people go, "Oh, like Taysom Hill's going to be used like Deebo Samuel," and Bob and I said, "Hold your horses, kids," because he's not. Rashid Shaheed may be a better fit for that spot. Taysom Hill might be a little bit more of that fullback / tight end we've been looking for. And I'll be the first to tell you guys, it's going to break some of your guys' hearts. It might even break some fantasy football owners' hearts. Taysom Hill's not a tight end. They tried it. No. It didn't work. He's not a traditional tight end.
No.
Right? Could you say he's like, I don't know. He's like, if Taysom Hill played in the NFL like 75 years ago and they were still running the wing T, like he'd be perfect.
Yeah.
He's a dream.
And he'd be in the Hall. He'd be in Canton.
Right. He's a dream for that triple option wing T type of offense. He's kind of one of those backs in the wing T. And that's what Kubiak sees, not like a traditional tight end.
Yeah.
So for fantasy football owners who have also asked, what is Taysom Hill? Because he's been listed at quarterback, tight end, running back, everything. He may very well have that tight end title removed this year because I don't think he's I don't think he's going to play enough at that position to warrant that. 2, I don't even know if that's where he's going to be listed on the depth chart this year. Like in years past, he was a tight end on depth charts. I don't think he is this year. I think
I'll tell you, Brendan, on that note, just before the OTAs, Taysom Hill on the official New Orleans Saints website was listed back as a quarterback. Again, that's more or less just for fantasy owners who are waiting to see where Taysom is going to get listed. We know, from covering the team, and you should know from watching the team, it doesn't matter where now I'm doing, picture my rock voice. It doesn't matter where Taysom Hill is listed. Taysom Hill is going to play all over the formation. There'll be times where he'll line up as an inline tight end. Won't be often, but he'll do it. He'll be used in motion a lot. I hope we know how talented he is as a runner and out of the backfield. I hope Clint Kubiak flips on the tape of, say, 2019 Taysom Hill, or even a couple games with Sean Payton in 2021. Taysom Hill can be a pretty darn good receiver. He can't run a full route tree, but he could be a weapon for you in the passing game. And that's something that Pete Carmichael obviously forgot all about, other than the occasional quick gimmick screenplay. I hope Clint Kubiak flips on those tapes and says, you know what, number 7 can catch the ball too. I need to get him the ball in open space in as many ways as possible.
I think you're right. And I think this is the time, like you kind of alluded to, with not playing, but having Penning take snaps at right tackle. Like, this is the time to experiment. This is the time to toy around and figure it out. Because Taysom is an effective offensive weapon. He always has been when utilized correctly. And that was one of the biggest knocks on the last offensive coaching regime is, right, I heard this quote, and I don't remember exactly. Yes, I do. It was Richard Jefferson. I know this is NBA, but said this the other day on ESPN when being asked about coaching vacancies. And while some of it I don't necessarily agree with, there are parts of it I do. And the quote was something along the lines of, like, coaching is not actually that hard. Like, coaching is having intellect and respect of your locker room and understanding the game.
Yeah.
But more than anything, it is putting your players in the best position to be successful, not just individually, but for the team's sake.
How many times have you heard me use the term coaching 101? That is one of the basics of coaching.
Right. And well, I think the first part of that statement is a little ignorant to say, well, coaching really isn't that hard. I understand like the latter half of where he's coming from is going, well, in all actuality, like your job is only a few things. And if you can do those few things really well, you're going to be a good coach. That's what I need to see out of this offensive coaching staff this year is I need to see the things that the last regime were not over the last few years. And I think seeing Taysom in that spot is a step in the right direction. John asks, any advantage to listing Taysom as a quarterback under the new roster rules? Not really. No. I mean, if you're insinuating that like the third emergency quarterback rule, like no, not at all, actually.
In actuality, it might, if he is listed as a quarterback, that might turn out to hurt you. Because then when you do line up Taysom directly behind center, you really can't take Derek Carr out of the game, because then all of a sudden, whether you have Nate Peterman, Spencer Rattler, Jake Haener, whoever it is, if you have them in mind for your number 2 quarterback, the second Derek Carr steps off of that field and Taysom Hill lines up behind the center, be it shotgun or directly under center, boom, Taysom Hill is now that number 2 quarterback. That's according to the rules. So yeah, that would actually work against you in that instance.
So there you have it. I want to continue with OTAs a little bit. I don't know how much we want to go down this rabbit hole, Bob. You kind of alluded to it at the beginning with your sarcasm and your Hall of Fame remarks. But Jake Haener's looked pretty good.
Yes.
Spencer Rattler has had his moments where he's a rookie in his first few days being with a pro football team. But what was it, the first day of OTAs, maybe the second day, like Spencer Rattler goes like perfect or dang near perfect passing, and Twitter blows up and people are like, oh my God, Hall of Famer Spencer Rattler. This is me also coming from a place, and those of you who watched our draftathon, or those of you who even watched our show last week or the week before, know that I was actually pretty happy with the pick while a lot of people weren't. Because I was like, you know what? In the 5th round, a lot of times you're taking chances. And this is a team that, if you go back through their history in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, there haven't been a lot of like sexy picks where it's like, we're just going to take a shot on somebody. And I thought they took a shot on somebody who has immense arm talent, a guy that a few years ago was viewed as the potential number 1 pick of the draft. Now that was before a lot of things went wrong at Oklahoma, but albeit they took a shot on a guy, and I really liked that. But to Bob's sarcastic point at the start, it is ridiculous to be talking about this guy like he's forget like Hall of Fame, forget All Pro, forget Pro Bowl level quarterback. Like, we're talking about a guy who may never start an NFL game in his life, right? I don't know what the percentage is. I'm sure I could look it up. Maybe I'll have it for you guys sometime this offseason. But like, how many 5th round quarterbacks end up even starting a game in the NFL? Right? And that's not a knock on Spencer Rattler. That's just the facts.
Yeah.
This guy's not going to be a starter this year. To steal Bob's line from last year when we were talking about Jake Haener, something would have had to go like terribly, immensely wrong this year if Spencer Rattler sees the field as the starting quarterback at all, right? And that's the reality of the situation. So before we open up and dive down this rabbit hole, I just want to get that off. I hope I'm speaking for me, but I think I'm also speaking for Bob, and a more of a toned down way than Bob would usually say it. But that's the reality of it. We can go ahead and talk about the quarterbacks because that's what a lot of you want to hear about. But that's the reality of it. We're talking about Haener versus Rattler in training camp, or now from OTAs to training camp to the preseason. But it's not like we're talking about the starting job. We're talking about likely that third quarterback that is going to be deemed the emergency quarterback.
Yeah, and possibly the number 2 quarterback.
Right.
Listen, what you want to see out of both Haener and Rattler, because I mean, Hainer is essentially a rookie himself. Granted, he's in his second year in the NFL, but he missed those first 6 weeks last year because he got himself suspended. That Now, he wouldn't have seen the field, but that cost him valuable practice time, valuable meeting time, valuable time with the coaches. He might not be a true rookie in the sense, every sense of the word, but experience-wise, he still very much is. So what you want to see from both Rattler and Hainer is a consistent upward trend, consistent improvement, consistent development, and hopefully, you have something. Maybe that something is no more than the kind of guy that we feel pretty confident we can win a few games with. If we have to turn to whether this season, next season, or 5 years from now, the kind of guy that we can win a few games with if he has to step in for a month. Because yes, I know Dak Prescott was a 4th-round pick. Everybody knows that Tom Brady went late in the draft. Everybody knows that Brock Purdy went late in the draft. Most people know that Kirk Cousins went very late in the draft. But outside of those 4, for every Cousins, Purdy, Prescott, for every one of them, there are 500 Ian Books, Sean Canfields, JT Barrett's, although I don't think JT was drafted at all. In other words, you get my point. I'll say it again for what feels like the 10 millionth time, and I'll include Jake Haener in this statement. Neither Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler were drafted to even develop as a starting quarterback. They were drafted with the idea that this guy fits the system that I want to run, and maybe we have a player. That's as far as it goes.
I'm glad you said that, because again, that's the reality of the situation. As much as we want some of these guys to work out, it may never happen. I think you're right about JT Barrett. I'll go a step further. Tyler Palko, which I don't know if Tyler Palko was drafted either.
He wasn't. And no Rose will ever say the last name Palko. Without ire in his voice. That's just a family rivalry.
Okay, well there you go. But yeah, I mean, you could go through the list. I think you did a pretty good job of naming off some of those Saints quarterbacks / undrafted free agents / drafted. That's just it. And you talked about maybe a guy you could hold you over for a month. I mean, go and look back at the 2 examples in recent memory for the Saints of quarterbacks that had to step in for about a month worth of time, right? Taysom Hill, undrafted. Teddy Bridgewater, 1st-round pick. And I mean, it goes both ways. We're just talking about guys that were 5th-round picks, like Prescott, Brady, whatever, that were later-round picks that end up succeeding. I mean, look at all the 1st-round picks that don't.
Right.
And I love Teddy Bridgewater a lot. And in all honesty, I wish it worked out to where we could have seen Teddy figure it out in New Orleans opposed to going somewhere else. And Teddy had a good long career, but that's not the career that you're hoping for when you draft a 1st-round pick. Now, injuries played a huge part of that. But, again, it's just how it goes. So before we get way too excited about a 5th-round quarterback or even a 4th-round quarterback in Haener last year, let's just, slow our roll a little bit. The preseason hype is real, and it will continue to be real. Let's talk about some other news before we kind of close out with some OTA thoughts. Let's talk about the Marshon Lattimore news, if you want to call it news. Lattimore's future with the Saints has been in question for a long time. And
not by us, but yeah.
But was most recently in question after the Saints' 2nd-round pick of Kool-Aid McKinstry. And I get it, right? Rightfully so. You draft a corner that high and you have the success of a Debo last year. Like, there are some question marks. But reports came out that Lattimore and the Saints had talked out their concerns and whatnot about the future. I think that report came from Bob Rose's favorite guy, Ian Rappaport. I could be wrong. I could be giving the credit to the wrong guy, but I'm pretty sure it was Rappaport who came out and said that. And it sounds like it's all good and that, there is no intent to actively find a trade partner, actively shop Marshon Lattimore. We were saying this even on draft night during our draftathon, that this was likely going to be the case. That if anything, the Kool-Aid selection was more security for the potential move of Paulson Adebo, who's on an expiring contract, or Alontae Taylor, who there's been some reports that the Saints were not really thrilled with Taylor last year. Take that with a grain of salt, if you will, as we say with a lot of the reports that may be floating out there in the Twitterverse. But you and I didn't really have a doubt that Marshon Lattimore would be on the roster. With this news, Bob, do you have more concern anywhere else? Like, is there more concern about the future status with Adebo, or is this just kind of a thing that should have been put to rest a long time ago that is finally getting put to rest, at least in the national media spotlight?
Yeah, it's a thing. This news isn't news to me, and it's something that you and I have been talking about since, frankly, December, certainly after Christmas. That Marshon Lattimore was never going to be moved, not this year. It still would have cost the Saints too much money even to do it post June 1st. And now that we're creeping up on June 1st, the national pundits are realizing that, oh my God, the things that we were claiming as stories, that deadline is here and it's not going to happen. Surprise, surprise, because it was never going to happen in the first place. So we better print our mea culpas, in a way that they typically do, not admitting that they were wrong, but simply saying, Dennis Allen said this, and Dennis Allen did say. It wasn't so much an Ian Rappaport report as directly from Dennis Allen's mouth. Yeah, me and Marshon have talked, a few times in the last few weeks. We expect him to be here next month for mandatory minicamp, and that's that. Marshon has not come to OTAs for the last few seasons, so that part wasn't any surprise, nor is it any concern. But now all of a sudden, people like Rappaport and others, oh my God, June 1st is going to come, and the Saints were never going to move Lattimore in the first place. Again, surprise, surprise, not. It's no news. It's not a news story at all, because this was something that is just being verified from things that people that you, myself, John Hendricks, Kyle Mosley, Nick Underhill, have been saying for literally months on end. Now there are a couple things with the Marshon Lattimore, Paulson Adebo, and I'll throw Alontae Taylor in this mix too. There are a couple things to realize going forward. Yes, Paulson Adebo. First of all, as you all well know, the Saints not only drafted Kool-Aid McKinstry in the second round of this draft, they traded up to get him. They didn't give up a whole lot, so it's not like they burned future assets, but it was noteworthy. And as you and I said at the time, this pick does have immediate value, but it was also made with an eye towards 2025 and beyond. Not to replace Marshon Lattimore specifically, not to replace Paulson Adebo, but not to replace anybody specifically, but to replace one of them. I can guarantee you that. Paulson Adebo is going to be a free agent. If he has anywhere close to the year that he had last year, he is going to be a highly sought-after free agent. Marshon Lattimore, his cap number, his cap hit, escalates from $14.6 million this year to $31.4 million next year. there is no chance in hell that Marshon Lattimore is going to be a New Orleans Saint with a cap hit of $31.4 million. I'm not suggesting that the Saints they're not going to cut him because that would create 20 nearly 21 million in dead cap money. But something has to be done. Basically, I believe the Saints are going to have to make a decision between Adebo or Lattimore, and Adebo is 2 years younger, by the way. Not as good a player, when they're both playing at their peak, but 2 years younger than Lattimore. Adebo is going to be significantly cheaper, even I suspect, at his new contract rate. But nonetheless, the Saints are going to have to make a decision. Do I keep Paulson Adebo? In other words, I have to make a move to re-sign him, either re-sign him or even franchise tag him before he hits the open market. And if I do that, then I'm pretty much saying, putting the writing in stone that Marshon Lattimore, we're going to make a move with Marshon Lattimore in 2025. Or do I restructure Lattimore? Now, Marshon has to be willing to do this too. Marshon is under contract until 2027, but there are 2 voided years at the end of that deal. In other words, that gives you some room to restructure, to push some of that cap hit back. But A, Marshon has to be agreeable to it, and B, if the Saints are agreeable to it, then you're pretty much saying I am picking Marshon Lattimore over Paulson Adebo, and perhaps even over Alontae Taylor, who's a free agent in 2026. So there's a lot of moving parts to these 3 cornerbacks, and you're waiting for the first domino to fall. Whether it's maybe the Saints try to sit down at the negotiating table with Paulson Adebo in September or October. Maybe this thing drags out until the end of the season, and just before free agency. But the first domino, whether it's making a move to re-sign or retain Paulson Adebo or trying to restructure Marshon Lattimore, one of those two things are going to happen, because I do not believe that both Adebo and Lattimore will be a Saint in 2025.
There you have it. I think that would ultimately be tough, right? I think you're right. I think one, especially with the cap hit for Lattimore, like you said, there's no way the Saints are paying Lattimore quarterback money, right? And I don't think there's any team in the league that's going to go, yeah, let's even the top best corner in football is not getting paid quarterback money. So yeah, Bob, I'm with you. I think it is newsworthy to people who do not follow this team very closely. Anybody that claims to be a fan of this team, that reads articles on a weekly basis, listens to podcasts on a weekly basis, tunes into live streams like this on a weekly basis, would know that ultimately this is exactly what we've been telling you for months at this point, that this is exactly how this was going to play out, and this is exactly what's going to happen. So it's not really news. It's just, it's a tweet from a national pundit that isn't in on the day-to-day. And like you said, Bob, I mean, from us to our colleague John Hendricks, all the way up to Nick Underhill, like most of us have been on this for a while. You could even say maybe even the previous off season, right? When there was talk, well, is Lattimore going to be moved? We're like, no, he's not a chance. And a lot of that had to do with, well, where the Saints were in terms of cornerback depth, where they were in terms of cap and restructuring and all the fun stuff that the Saints do every offseason. But we kind of knew where we were with all of that. So back to OTAs, Bob. Derek Carr present with some of those receivers, Olave, Rashid Shaheed, what have you. What are you hoping for out of Derek Carr in a new offense? Like, put yourself in the shoes of Clint Kubiak. You're installing a new offense slowly but surely with a veteran quarterback who will be with his second offensive coordinator in 2 years with a new team. It's almost like being a freshman again, right? It's almost like being a rookie again for the second straight year for Derek Carr. What are you hoping to achieve if you're in Kubiak's shoes through the first little bit of OTAs, not just with Carr, but really the offense as a whole?
I want immediate comfort from my core players, with at least around half of the playbook that I want to run. Last year you and I were telling people, hey, the people that were anointing Derek Carr as the next great thing. And by the way, many of you are now the ones that are calling for Spencer Rattler to replace Derek Carr. Another story, another time. You know who you are. But we were telling people, last year at this time, hey, don't be surprised if it takes Derek, 4-6-ish weeks, to get on the same page, with his offensive coaches, to get on the same page with his, wide receivers, tight ends, running backs. Now, unfortunately, it took longer than that, but they seem to really be humming. Carr, Olave, A.T. Perry, certainly Rashid Shaheed, and even Kamara a little bit as a receiver. When Carmichael remembered how good a receiver he was. I'm going to continue to blast that all season long, by the way. But that crew was really humming at the end of the season. And I say that because even with a new offensive coordinator, you do expect some growing pains. There's no doubt. But it better not take Derek Carr and those guys 3, 4, 6 weeks to get acclimated again, because they're learning a new playbook, they're learning a new coach, they're learning new terminology, but they're familiar with each other. They've had a year to work with each other. They've had all off season where they should have been working with each other. And I didn't say that, saying that they are or aren't. I don't know. I believe they should have been. So at least you have that part knocked out of the way. So I do expect, if I'm Clint Kubiak, I do expect Carr and these my top receivers, my top returning running backs to have immediate comfort, with at least a portion of my playbook. Where if I had to play a game that mattered tomorrow, that I could put together a decent, and cohesive offensive game plan. And if that's the case, then I'm able to build on that every week, starting now, starting through mini camp, starting into training camp, hitting the ground with my feet running. Again, you're going to get some growing pains because that's just the nature of the business. But these guys are professionals, so they need to have immediate comfort now. And part of that's on Kubiak too. You better believe that Clint, if Clint's worth his salt as a coach, and I've always thought very, very, very highly of him. That before even he accepted this job, he looked at Derek Carr and he looked at what Derek Carr does well, and hey, is that going to? What does Derek Carr do well, and how's that fit into my system? What does Alvin Kamara do well? How's that fit in with my system? Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, etc. So, while I'm putting a lot of the onus on the players and their acclimation with each other, it's also on the coaches to recognize what these players do best and how is that going to fit into my system.
I think strong answers from you there. I think for me, the one thing I want to see here early on, and this might sound stupid, but I want to be able to see out of Derek Carr more than anybody, like comprehension of what I want to do. And you guys might say, well, duh. Like, of course you want to see that. Well, yeah, but I do. And if you guys want a prime example, the NFL is an interesting world because the language from coach to coach is so similar, but so drastically different.
Mm-hmm.
And if you guys want a prime example, head over to X or Twitter or whatever you call it and go to Chase Daniel's account. And he had a tweet in response to, who was it? Dan Overlowski or whatever, the quarterback played for the Lions, who's now on ESPN. He was going through his rookie playbook, and Chase Daniel responded and said, "Oh yeah, here's Sean Payton's playbook." And it's like a 3-minute video of him going through just like terminology.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not talking about like, going down to, your Thursday or your Fridays when you're putting your favorite plays in. He's talking about just install, like early in the week. And it was a super informative video. If you guys have never had the opportunity to really sit and learn, hey, this is what an NFL playbook is.
Mm-hmm.
So you watch that and you go, man, Derek Carr has to relearn, like unlearn everything from last year and now learn something completely different. I just want signs of comprehension. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I need to see and know, like, okay, he's getting it. He's understanding. We're on the same wavelength. We're on the same page of the book. We might not be in the same sentence of the same page as the book, but at least we're both on page 10. We might be on different sentences, but we're in the general vicinity of understanding. That's what I want to see.
Hell, even if you can stay on the same chapter within the couple of pages, that's something you can build on right away. Again, if I'm Clint, if I'm Derek, I want immediate comfort level to the point that if I had to play a game that mattered in the standings tomorrow, that we know enough about each other and are comfortable enough about with each other that we could put together a cohesive game plan capable of exploiting a defense.
Perfect. I mean, that's A+ perfect way to say that, because at the end of the day, that's what we want. We don't need, and it's OTAs for a reason. We don't need to sit here and go into like these super complex parts of the offense. We just need a basic understanding. And that goes for, like, Derek Carr is obviously the head of the snake, but that goes for everybody else too. Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, some of these guys that are coming in, we need to understand the basic concepts, basic verbiage, terminology of what they're trying to do. Because like I said, let's just say, I don't know, a simple term like zebra in one playbook with an offensive coordinator, one terminology means one thing, but zebra in Clint Kubiak's system means something completely different. So if the call's like, I'm just gonna make something like X zebra, Y drag, and it's just drag is drag. Like, if you're an NFL receiver, you should know what the word drag means. You should know what that route is. But you're sitting there like, oh, okay, well, maybe zebra and Carmichael's was like an option post, right? But now you're in Kubiak's system, and zebra means you are running a 10-yard out. That's a big difference in a route. And that goes from Derek Carr understanding that all the way to the receivers understanding that. So that's the biggest thing that I want to see. I know, the big flashy news of like Taysom Hill, the Spencer Rattler versus Jake Haener. I know that's the stuff that people are going to be wanting the most information on. But for me, and our buddy John does a great job of logging this stuff throughout the offseason, I'm going to be going through those articles and those like play-by-plays of 7v7s, those play-by-plays of the 11v11s when those come out, and his analysis of, okay, this is where Derek Carr hit and this is where he didn't hit, and this is why he hit and this is why he didn't hit. Those things are going to be so vital in my mind to where the Saints stand moving forward. So with that, Bob, look at the clock. We're almost out of time. We haven't played dot or drop in a while. So let's play a little dot or drop. And my first to you is dot or drop Kendre Miller's OTAs training camp, what do we call it? The preseason for Kendre Miller will not be under as much of a microscope as maybe it should be.
I laugh because my daughter dropped, and I got to change it now, but my daughter dropped, it was Kendre Miller related.
Perfect. Great minds, Bob. Great minds.
Yeah, right. I'm gonna say Dot. I don't think people are paying attention to Kendre Miller, but I actually think that's a good thing. I love Kendre Miller in this offense. First of all, I think Alvin Kamara is going to have a career year, but I think that this offense is also tailor-made for everything that Kendre Miller does well. We really saw him. We saw flashes from him last year. Against New England, Chicago, Indianapolis, he made plays. And then he really put it all together at the end of the year against a bad Atlanta team, but still. As long as Kendre Miller stays healthy, I think he's the number 2 back over Jamal Williams, in this system, and I think that he can threaten the defense in many of the same ways that Alvin Kamara can. I'm not saying he's another Alvin Kamara, but I'm saying he has a similar skill set that Clint Kubiak and those coaches are going to be able to use. So no, I don't think enough people are paying enough attention to Kendre Miller. So that part I'll drop. I'll dot, excuse me. But I actually think it's a good thing. Let 25 fly under the radar, and take the league by storm, in the first month or two of the season, because everybody's so worried about Kamara, Taysom Hill, Chris Olave, and now all of a sudden Kendre Miller has 130 all-purpose yards and a couple scores per game.
Ooh. I'm just going to throw it out there. Ron on YouTube's comment, Miller will be running back 1. Saints fans are not realizing how poorly Kamara has played. We can dive into that a different time.
Yeah, that's a great topic. It really is. I don't think Kamara has not played up to his abilities, and Brendan and I have called him out for it. That he has just seen in the last 2 years, especially, he's seemed frankly disinterested at times. And for really, if you acknowledge that Ryan Ramczyk may not play another down, and that's another story for another time too, that really the only 2 members left of this 2017 great draft class are Marshon Lattimore and Alvin Kamara. And there are a lot of questions about both of these players coming into this season about, do they really want to play here anymore? Kamara in his actions, and Marshon, with his reported dissatisfaction with the coaching staff, and how hurt was he, especially last year, those kind of things. So no, Kamara could have played better, no doubt, but I will continue to fault Pete Carmichael for not using Kamara to his best skills.
So to say, shoot, I'd be disinterested too if I sat there and it was like, hey, Alvin, you're really great in open space. We're gonna run you up the middle about.
It'd be tough,
times.
yeah.
I'd probably get disinterested too after that, and after taking some of the unnecessary hits that I took. It's not an excuse by any means. You're a professional. You got to do what you got to do. But man, I understand it too. Keeping it real, Who Dat Sports Podcast says it seems the new offensive line coach, John Benton, had decided from watching film that Penning may be served on the right side of the line. In doing this, I think Benton is putting Penning in, a better position. We'll have to see how that plays out. But again,
it's still early, as we pointed out. I like using him at right tackle just to see if he can pick it up. His body style and especially his feet are a little bit more suited to the right side, where you're not going to face as many explosive edge rushers, athletic edge rushers, as you would on the left side. But I mean, we'll see if that works out. Because I think Fuaga, I feel strongly that Fuaga has the agility and the feet to play either side. So if you can get something out of Penning on the right side, and Fuaga plays okay with a flip to the left, something that not a lot of tackles have been able to do, by the way, then you got yourself the makings of a good line. with two very, very young players, by the way.
All right, Bob, hit me with the final daughter drop of the night before we say our goodbyes.
Daughter drop, and I'm jumping way ahead. I want to skip past OTAs, past training camp, past the season. 2025, Paulson Adebo will be a New Orleans Saint. Marshon Lattimore will not. Daughter drop.
So we're talking 2025, like after the season is over.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Whew. I think at this point it's kind of inevitable. I think the writing's on the wall that Marshon's time is coming to a close. It's not going to be this year, but I do think the writing's on the wall. Part of that has to do with the contract stuff that we've already talked about. But I will dot that. I think that the youth of Adebo and the price tag will be better for the Saints than Lattimore will. Will the Saints cut Lattimore? No, they'll probably try to trade him and probably find a trade partner. And it will probably be less than what Saints fans think they should get back for Lattimore, but it's going to be a move of desperation to get whatever you can for him. So I will dot that one. Bob, another Wednesday in the books. We're making it a habit to actually be here on Wednesdays. I like that. I like the fact that we actually have stuff to talk about that's not, looking so far ahead. Like football is kind of in the air at this point. Mm-hmm. It's a fun time of the year. With that, Bob, where can everybody follow you, your work, as you continue to cover this team throughout OTAs?
Folks, thanks for to those of you that are tuning in tonight, and also thank you for those of you that are catching up with us. After the fact that weren't able to make our live broadcast. At first our membership has plateaued a little bit. We haven't lost members, but we haven't gained any members either to our Bayou Blitz Facebook page and Bayou Blitz Twitter page at Bayou Blitz Pod. I realized that those of you that are tuning in tonight, most of you, probably all of you, are members of both pages. If you're not, please do so. And if you are, start reeling in, especially now that the real football season is rapidly approaching. Start getting other Saints fans, just other football fans in general, to that Bayou Blitz Facebook page, especially. Brendan and I have a target number in mind, and when we hit it, we're going to start doing exclusive things, videos, shows, extra shows, etc., for the Bayou Blitz members only. It's obviously free of charge, but it's just kind of an exclusive perk that we want to give you guys for your loyalty to us. And you can also follow me personally, Bob Rose, on Facebook, at Bobby R 2613 on Twitter. You can not only catch Brendan and I's shows on our personal pages, but I post all of my articles, all of my Saints related articles on my personal Facebook and Twitter pages as well.
For myself, you can follow me virtually everywhere at BT Boylan. I'm going to post something this week. As a lot of you know, I do not post a whole lot of personal things when it comes to Twitter. And the few of you that I have allowed on my Facebook, which is not many because I like to keep that private, it's usually not super personal stuff. But I will be posting a link to my wedding website and registry if any of you feel so kind. We would certainly appreciate anything that comes our way as we look forward to tying the knot in October. About a month into the football season? Be week 5. So I will be posting that. You can get my thoughts on the Saints there on my Twitter at BT Boylan, along with my thoughts on mostly random sports things, but thoughts nonetheless. We thank you guys so much for hanging out with us tonight and every Wednesday. Until next Wednesday, find peace, spread love, practice positivity. We'll see you next week for another episode of the Bayou Blitz. See you then.
And I know.